Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and welcome to the Daily Check-In for September 8th, 2020. It's Terraform Tuesday, and I came across an interesting thing when I was looking around at different Terraform stuff. Someone, an individual, has taken the Azure Quickstarts, which are ARM templates on GitHub, and started translating those into Terraform. And I was like, wow, this is a really good idea. Why has no one done this yet? I've seen similar instances where someone took Kubernetes the hard way and translated that into Terraform, which to a certain degree sort of defeats some of the purpose of Kubernetes the hard way because you're making it easier by deploying all the infrastructure using Terraform. But like, I get the idea. This is not that. This is something a little bit different. And I thought, hey, let's take an adventure and see how far we can get in it. So that's what we're going to do today. But, before we get into that, let's check in and see how you're doing. Hey, welcome to Tuesday. I hope you had a long weekend if you're in the US and you were celebrating Labor Day. I know I had a good long weekend. I did a live stream yesterday, but I only did one, and that's all of the work I did yesterday. And then today was interesting because today the kids went back to school and the house is empty, and it's very odd. So I don't know if you're having a similar experience today, but that's kind of what's going on with me. It is Taco Tuesday, so I'm absolutely making tacos for dinner. So that brings some normalcy back to my life. But otherwise, it's weird. It's weird around here. So anyway, that's what's going on with me. Let's dive into this very interesting project. So if you're interested in this project, of course, I will include a link in the show notes, the description that has this particular repository. Let me just share out my screen. So this is the repository that has this project, and it looks like it's only like 18 days old. So this individual has made a decent amount of progress. It looks like his name is Kieran, and he's made a decent amount of progress already with a bunch of modules in here, especially around the 101 configurations. So if you looked at the ARM template basic configurations they have, I don't even know, it's got to be over 100 of these quick start configurations. And the idea is like to provide you a basic framework that you can then translate into something more complicated. So if you were looking to do something like, hey, I just want to see how I would do it with an ARM template to set up a virtual machine with an RDP port open, here would be a basic way of doing that. And it would be an ARM template in the original Azure repository, but in here, he's reconfigured it using the RDP port. And it looks like he's reused some of the same graphics that exist in the original Microsoft Quick Start template. So if we click through on the link here, it'll take us to the actual Quick Start templates that all of this is based off of. So very interesting project to me. And so if we go back to the project itself, let's see if we can get one of these configurations deployed. So which one should we do? Let's do something that doesn't require spinning up a virtual machine because that takes a while. Let's do one that is just spinning up some networking gear. So there's 101 VNet 2 subnets. So this, I'm guessing, sets up a virtual network with 2 subnets in it. And yeah, it's real easy to do this with Terraform. This is not complicated, but it's interesting that he's converted it over. So what files do we have in here? We've got a main.tf, we've got our variables.tf, and then a tf vars file. Now I've already copied this, cloned this repository into VS Code. So why don't we go over to VS Code, boom, and we'll go down and expand out this 2 subnets and take a look at what the configuration looks like here. All right, so what do we got in here? We've got a resource group because you need a resource group. So it creates a resource group, it creates a virtual network, and it creates 2 subnets. Very straightforward, very simple. Now, in order to create all of those things, we need to set some variables, obviously. So let's take a look at what's in the variables.tf file. We have a provider that's fully defined in here, and it's using version 2 of the provider. And it is specifying the subscription ID, the client secret, and tenancy. So immediately, I'm not a huge fan of this. I know this is an easy way to do it, but it means that you have to statically store your information in this terraform.tf vars file. I'd much prefer that you take the approach of using the Azure CLI, like integrated login. So what you can do is if you have the Azure CLI installed, you can do AZ login, select the subscription you want to use, and then Terraform will use that information in its provider to load. Now, or the other option is to use environment variables instead of using statically defined variables in here. But that's, as long as you know when you go to production, probably don't do this, it's totally fine. Then we have some additional variables here. So we've got our variable declaration for all the information that's going into the provider. And we've got a variable for resource group name that defaults to demo RG, a location of West US, a VNet name of VNet1, and we've got our address prefix and then our subnet prefixes and our subnet names. Okay, so pretty straightforward so far. Now, I don't want to supply that information in line, so I'm just going to pull all of that information out of the provider, and I'm going to delete these variables so I don't have to supply them. So it just goes from memory to do that. Now let's go into this folder. We'll go into 101, and it was VNet 2 subnets. Okay, we're in the folder, good to go. And I've pulled out the variables that I don't want to use. If we look at terraform.tf-vars, he has it set up already that all you have to do is, copy and paste your information in here and save it. Now, obviously, if you're doing this, you've cloned it. You don't want to commit this back to source control. Don't do that. And the way that the Git Ignore is set up in this repository, if you're not familiar, and I had to learn this the hard way, the Git Ignore basically tells Git what files to not include when you're committing those files to the local repository. And when you push that to a remote repository, those files won't be included. Typically, I don't include the terraform.tf-vars file because that sometimes has sensitive information in it. And the thing you don't want to do is you don't want to push that sensitive information up to GitHub and publish your Azure credentials or your AWS credentials for everyone to see. Fortunately, GitHub has scanners constantly running to flag that sort of thing and let you know, oops, you did that. But if you can avoid it, don't do it, which is why, if you're going to fork this and use it, I would recommend making sure you never commit that information back or adding the terraform.tf-vars as an ignored file to the Git Ignore. Highly recommend doing that if you're going to be using it in that way. But okay, we'll close that out. I've pulled that information out. I'd also really recommend, and maybe I'll fork this and made some improvements, for the provider, it should be pinned to a version of the provider, especially when the next version comes out. If there's any breaking changes, you don't want those changes to break these demo things. So again, just another thing to be aware of, another thing to think through. All right, so with all that in mind, we'll go through our standard Terraform init, and it should, go out and grab the Azure RM provider. It's downloading 2.26. Like I said, if he had it pinned to version 2 and version 3 comes out that has some breaking changes, it won't break the config, and then he can update it as he goes. But I definitely recommend having that version in there. All right, so the next thing, let's do a Terraform validate and just make sure that the code is all good, that there's no issues with the way it's set. Success config is valid, which also means I pulled out all the variables properly. Okay, cool. So let's just do a Terraform. I'm going to go for broke here, and I am going to do a Terraform apply with auto approve and just let it go. Now, obviously in the wild, you probably don't want to do this. You want to do Terraform plan and then do a Terraform apply based off of a TF plan file that you've generated. But in our case, we're playing fast and loose with it. We're going to see what happens. And I did the auto approve flag, which means that it's automatically going to deploy this. So in theory, it should create a resource group, a VNet in that resource group, and 2 subnets. And hopefully it will get to that relatively soon. There's nothing quite like waiting. So I don't know how long that's going to take. Any other improvements that I would make to this? Well, it already has the variable type, so that's good. Thumbs up for that. It's got a default value for the variables. I like that as well. And for the description, it has a description. So that's winning on all fronts there. The other thing that I would probably include, and this is new in Terraform.13, is some sort of variable validation. Now, that's mostly necessary for if you're doing like storage accounts or something, you want to make sure it's all lowercase or valid syntax, or if you're adding a DNS name and you want to make sure that that's valid. Okay. So it said warning values for undeclared variables, which is fine. And it completed and added all the things. Because I didn't delete the terraform.tf file, it saw that those values were being defined, but they're not used in the config. So it's throwing me a warning, say, hey, I see this thing, but don't worry about it. So it successfully created all this stuff. So this is a really interesting project. And I think, with work and some help from some other folks, it could grow into a really big, robust project. And it's very early. So I'm sharing it out with you. If you want to fork the GitHub repo and test it out yourself, or, I'm going to try to make some improvements, or you can ask to be a contributor directly on the repository. It's, kind of up to you. That's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe in all the good places. Tomorrow's Wednesday, and I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. It's tech analysis. A couple things came out recently that I think are interesting, so it might be something around what I read recently. So that'll be tomorrow. But until then, stay healthy, stay safe, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye now.